Kwame was an ordinary boy from the village of Asempa. He was neither the strongest nor the fastest. He was not among the cleverest, nor was he one of those boys who commanded attention with their laughter and energy. He was simply Kwame, a quiet boy who often went unnoticed. The other children rarely included him in their games, and the young girls of the village hardly paid him any mind. The one girl he admired the most, Adwoa, had never even looked his way. Kwame spent most of his time alone, wandering through the dusty paths between his home and the village school. His father was a strict man who believed that hard work and discipline were the only things that made a man. His mother, though kind, was always busy with chores and had little time to sit with him and listen to his thoughts. Kwame felt invisible, as though he were a mere shadow passing through life unseen and unheard. One evening, after another lonely day at school, Kwame sat by the great river that bordered the village. The water was calm, reflecting the orange hues of the setting sun. He picked up a small rock and threw it into the river, watching the ripples spread out and disappear. That was how he felt, like a ripple, briefly visible before fading into nothingness. He thought about ending his suffering of walking into the deep waters where the spirits were said to dwell, or drinking one of the dangerous potions the village healer kept locked away. But just as these dark thoughts clouded his mind, he heard his father's voice calling his name in the distance. Kwame sighed, stood up, and made his way home. But instead of going straight to the house, he walked towards the outskirts of the village where an ancient shrine stood. The shrine was said to be the resting place of Okomfo Nyamekie, the patron deity of forgotten souls. The villagers rarely visited it, fearing the power that was said to dwell there. But Kwame, feeling abandoned by the world, entered without hesitation. Inside the shrine, a stone statue of the deity stood tall, its features worn by time, but still imposing. Kwame stepped forward and spoke, pouring out his heart. He asked why he had been born ordinary, why he had been cursed to be ignored, why, if he could not be special, he should even continue living. The air around him grew still, and the oil lamp inside the shrine flickered as if the deity had heard his plea. A strange sensation passed through Kwame's body, but he ignored it and left. The next day at school, something strange happened. As he stood in the courtyard listening to the boys tease him once again, something inside him snapped. He clenched his fists and muttered, "Stop!" To his shock, the boy who had been taunting him suddenly froze in place, his eyes wide with fear. The other students screamed and backed away. Kwame, in a panic, said, "Move!" And the boy collapsed, gasping for breath. Kwame could not believe what had happened. He tested his newfound power again, this time on a group of students. "Stop!" he commanded, and they all stopped moving. It was as though time itself had frozen for them. Kwame realized that he had been given a gift. No, not a gift, a power. The power to control others with just his words. After that, Kwame misused his power on Adwoa by freezing her and getting close to her, touching her cheeks without her consent, and even harass her, of which she is totally unaware. He continued this dirty game of harassment without her will many times, until he realized at that moment, when he wished to kiss her in a motionless posture, and stop by controlling himself because he wants her presence and feeling of kissing him. Then he decides to show Adwoa what he could do, freezing and unfreezing people at will. Though she was frightened at first, she eventually agreed to be with him, more out of fear than love. Kwame did not care. He had finally gotten what he wanted. The night Kwame returned home, his heart pounding with excitement. As he walked into the compound, his father greeted him, but Kwame did not respond. Instead, he lifted his hand and whispered, "Stop." His father stopped moving, his eyes locked in shock. Kwame smiled and walked past him, entering his room. He was unstoppable. In his room, he stood in front of his small mirror and admired himself. He was no longer the quiet, forgotten boy. He was powerful. He could make anyone listen, make anyone obey. As he stared into the mirror, a thought crossed his mind. Could he freeze himself? Could he control his own movements the way he did others? He was eager to test it. Without thinking, he whispered, "Stop." Instantly, his body locked in place. His arms stiffened, his legs froze, and his victorious smile remained frozen on his face. But unlike the others, he could not unfreeze himself. He had trapped himself in his own power. The next morning, when his mother came to wake him, she screamed in horror. Kwame was still standing, his face eerily frozen in triumph, but his body unresponsive. His father, now unfrozen, rushed in and tried to shake him, but it was no use. They carried him to the village healer, who examined him and shook his head. "The gods have claimed him," the healer said. "He misused the gift, and now he will remain like this forever." Word spread quickly through the village. Some said that Okonfo Nyamekye had cursed Kwame for his arrogance. Others believed that the power had been too much for a mere human to control. Adwoa, standing at her window, watched as Kwame's lifeless body was carried away, knowing deep down that this had always been a test of humility, which Kwame had failed. And so Kwame, the boy who had wanted to be special, became a cautionary tale. Mothers told their children his story, warning them about the dangers of pride and the misuse of power.